I'm king of the world! Could somebody give me a push? In vanilla Minecraft, there is a noticeable lack of working vehicles. Now, apart from minecarts, there are no vehicles on the land, though one could kinda sorta argue that horses should count. And there's no vehicles in the air, but again, one could kinda sorta argue that there are elytras. But when it comes to water, vanilla Minecraft has always had rowboats. And you could even take a buddy with you. And quite frankly, that's pretty cool. Useful too. But then we have modded Minecraft, and with all due deference to Led Zeppelin, a whole lot of love has been heaped on flying and land vehicles, and you can find my mod deep dive videos for some of them on my channel. However, for many modded Minecraft worlds, your only real chance for travel by water is still the plain old vanilla rowboat. Though I suppose you could just swim for it. But in this video, I'm here to talk about one of my favorite rowboat alternatives, the small ships mod. I guess the name pretty much spoils the surprise as to what this mod's all about. Today, I'll be talking about small ships 2.0.9-B1.3, and that version number is big and complicated, but the mod isn't. In fact, it's pretty vanilla friendly, but don't let that fool you. There's a surprising amount of depth here, and if I'm being honest, it also scores very high in the cool and fun categories. So without further ado, let's weigh anchor. But I guess to even have a ship, you need to build it. And the good news is that all the ships in the mod are built with basic materials, though the lead is probably the most problematic ingredient in the early game, as they require slime balls and a lot of string. Of course, the wandering traders' llamas each drop a lead when killed, but of course I'm not recommending or condoning the murder of those poor innocent creatures. Though, if they happen to suffer an unfortunate and completely accidental lava bath, or have several stacks of sand and or gravel fall on them, well, trying to see the bright side of things would reveal that there would now be a free lead or two available. When life gives you lemons, make lemonade. Though I guess in this case it's when life gives those llamas lemons, you have a chance to make a ship. And as luck would have it, there are 4 ships to choose from. Some of the ships have oars, but all of them have sails, and that's what you will generally use to propel them. Just to note that the ships included in this mod are all based on actual historical ship types. And if you've seen many of my videos, you know that this is the kind of thing that I like to do in my own work, so I absolutely support and admire others that do this too. So, yay! The first ship is the cog. Historically, cogs were small trade and transport ships that were used during the Middle Ages. And that is to say that when men reached their middle age crisis, there were no red convertible sports cars to buy yet, so they got a small convertible boat instead. These little ships first started to pop up in the 10th century, and they generally replaced the last generations of Viking longships. She's the smallest ship included in the mod, but she's a beast when compared to a vanilla rowboat. The cog has a whopping 108 inventory slots and can carry 4 passengers in addition to the captain. She can be equipped with up to 4 cannons, and she has good speed and can maneuver fairly well. The second ship is the brig. Now, these small ships appeared in the late 18th century and remained pretty common as trade vessels and small warships for about 100 years. While brigs were generally considered smaller ships in real life, the brig in the small ships mod is among the largest of the ships available. She has a phenomenal 162 inventory slots, and she can carry 10 passengers in addition to the captain. Plus, she can have up to 6 cannons mounted on her deck. And she has the best speed of all the ships in the mod, and she handles quite well. Next is the galley. Galleys were first developed way back in ancient times, but they enjoyed a surprisingly long career, with some galley types remaining in use until the early 19th century. Now, galleys had sails, but they also relied heavily on the use of oars, and they were commonly used for trade, warfare, and even piracy. She has a respectable 54 inventory slots and room for 8 passengers in addition to the captain. She can only carry 2 cannons, but she's pretty fast, and she handles like a sports car. The final ship is the Drakkar. She's the famous Viking longship of history and legend. And now these are the ships that brought the Vikings on their raids throughout Western and Northern Europe, so unless you were a Viking, these ships were not a particularly welcome sight on the horizon. She has 54 inventory slots and space for 10 passengers aside from the captain. Now she can't carry any cannons, but she can have shields. Not Star Trek shields or anything like that, but plain old Minecraft shields. The kind that you use to protect yourself from getting the snot knocked out of you. These are fitted along the hull to offer additional protection to passengers and cargo, and she also has a unique capability to break sea ice, which makes these ships popular for parties on the water, because the ship itself is a great icebreaker. There's no need for a specialized workstation to craft one of these babies. Just plop the necessary bits into a full-size crafting grid and the finished ship will drop into your inventory. I personally would have loved to have a dry dock set up and to launch the newly made ships into the water, but that would undoubtedly be a monster to code, so I'm happy with what we have. Still, one can always dream. Now, to deploy the ship, you need to have it in hand and use it on the surface of some water. For best results, place it several blocks ahead of you, as the ship will need some space to spawn into. The mechanics to sailing are pretty simple. Sails are deployed, ship goes forward. Stow the sails and the ship stops. Turn the rudder left or right, or to port and starboard if you're kind of hardcore about it, and the ship turns. However, despite the simple controls, sailing these ships will take a bit of practice to get used to them, and there's a bit of an art to guiding your ship gracefully across the water. Unless you've come to understand the skills involved and practice them a bit yourself, your sailing might more closely resemble a drunken whale swerving from side to side and bumping into everything in its path. As I said before, the controls are simple and really fall into just two parts. There are the controls for steering the ship, and there are the controls for the sails. The sails are important, but I will start with the rudder ones. By default, the A and D keys will steer the ship to port and starboard. And in real life, a boat or ship needs to be moving for the rudder to have any effect at all. But in this mod, using the rudder keys while the ship is at a dead stop will still pivot the ship around. So, unlike real life, it's very hard to get your ship into a spot that you can't get it back out. Now that you can steer, you can move on to the sail controls. The sails are toggled through the use of the sail key, which by default is the R key. This toggles the sails from fully stowed, which provides no forward movement at all, to the minimal state, which will move the ship along very slowly. The sails can be unfurled or stowed in increments, so pressing the W key will unfurl the sails a little more, and with each press the ship will move correspondingly faster. Pressing the S key will stow the sails a little more, and the ship will slow down. Speeding up or slowing down is not immediate, but the lag is very short. I personally find it funny that for the ship to go, you need to use the sails, because in my family, my wife forces us to stop for sails. For the ships that have no oars, you're not going anywhere until you lower the sails. Pressing the W and S keys do a whole lot of nothing. But for the ships with oars, pressing the W key while the sails are stowed will use the oars to move the ship, and at a pretty fair clip. The speed of the ship impacts the steering radius and the general responsiveness of the ship. The faster the ship is moving, the wider are the turns. Also, turning the rudder hard to port, or hard to starboard, and taking your finger off the key will mean that the rudder will gradually straighten without any further help from you. However, it takes a few seconds for the rudder to fully straighten, so if you want that to happen sooner, or as soon as possible, you will need to be more proactive. Now, all of the ships have rudders, but the Dakar and Galley also have oars. And when steering these ships, the rudder will still turn, but the oars on the ship will also animate appropriately, and with the help of the oars, these vessels are particularly maneuverable. For best results, keep course corrections minimized while the ship's at speed and stow the sails a notch or two to slow the ship when space is tight and precise steering is more important. Also, you'll want to keep in mind that you can't sail your ship backwards, so plan accordingly when you dock your ship. In the absolute worst case scenario, you can completely stow the sails and use the rudder to completely turn the ship around. When the ship's in motion, it can damage entities in the water, especially fish near the surface. The faster the ship's moving, the more damage it's done. Killed fish will often wind up in the inventory of the passengers, so you can consider this as one more way to sort of go fishing, and it also helps feed your passengers on longer cruises. Just charge them a little extra for the fresh sushi. Heavily laden ships, including ships with cannons or ships with a lot of cargo, will have their top speed reduced. Now each cannon can slow down the ship by 2.5%, and completely filling the ship's cargo capacity will lower the speed by up to another 10%. If you need speed and you have a full load, start throwing stuff overboard to lighten the load. Just like real life. It's likely that you also know some passengers that you would love to throw overboard as well. Unfortunately, the number of passengers doesn't impact speed, but on the other hand, they probably don't know that. I'm just saying. The first entity that boards the ship will take the captain's seat at the stern or rear of the ship. Everyone that boards after that will start filling out the rows down each side of the ship, from the stern to the bow. If a player boards the ship, they pull a Sheldon Cooper and they will take the captain's seat and displace the non-player entity to one of the passenger seats. Boarding is accomplished by right-clicking on the ship. Leaving the ship is accomplished by using the standard Minecraft dismount key. Once an entity is dismounted, they will be standing in the ship but not considered boarded on the ship. And if the ship's in motion, the standing entity is likely to get swept off the back of the ship and probably take some damage. By now, you should know that as a general rule, you should remain seated with your arms, legs, and any other body parts inside the ship until it comes to a complete stop. Sometimes it can be problematic to remove non-player entities from vehicles, kind of like a bad smell that just won't air out. Luckily, the Small Ships mod has a solution, which is to right-click on a seated entity with an empty hand, and the entity will then stand up and be free to move around. However, there's a good chance that the same entity will move in the wrong direction and wind up reboarding the ship. Now, it is what it is, but these ships will prove mighty useful for those longer journeys to bring back livestock, especially the very long journeys to bag camels, pandas, and other exotic beasties. As mentioned before, each ship has quite a few inventory slots, and as those slots are filled, cosmetic chests and packages will start to appear on the deck of the ship. Now, the more of these cosmetic containers you see, the less free space you have in your shipboard cargo hold. Now, to be crystal clear, when I say cosmetic containers, I mean these visible containers that serve no practical or actual purpose. They're there purely as a cosmetic indicator of how full the cargo hold is. I definitely do not mean containers full of cosmetics, though such goods were historically considered luxury goods and were thus pretty profitable. However, I digress. A popular part of any mod showcase or review video is the bit where the presenter shows you how to use the mod to blow stuff up. This is that bit. Now you can channel your inner Captain Jack Sparrow by arming your ship with cannons. Cannons in the mod and in real life are heavy, really heavy, and as I noted a minute ago, they can slow your ship down a bit. On the other hand, while your ship is moving slower, it also has a punch like a couple of locomotives running at full speed. So anybody following you and harassing you deserves to have their socks blown off, probably with their feet still in them. To use cannons, obviously you need a ship and a cannon to put it on. Now mounting cannons is pretty easy. Just have the cannon in your hand and right click on the ship. Cannons are mounted in a similar fashion to passengers boarding the ship. So the first cannons to be installed will be at the stern of the ship, and as you add cannons, they will be added moving forward to the bow. If for some crazy reason you want to remove your cannons, use an axe and right click on any part of the ship except the cannon, and it will remove cannons, in the reverse order from how they were added in the first place. Cannons are kind of pricey. Each one requires 3 blocks of iron, and so a full battery of cannons on a brig will set you back 18 blocks of iron. Now that's enough iron to equip a group of villagers or players with weapons and armor. However, a group of villagers can't do this. To fire a cannon, you need some cannonballs, and they need to be stored in the ship's hold, and you need to be boarded on the ship. Not just standing on it, but actually boarded so that you can control the ship. Now at that point, just look at the cannon you want to fire and press the space bar. This works in both the first and third person perspectives, and if you target between 2 cannons, you may be able to get both of them to fire at the same time. If you are on a brig, you can have up to 3 cannons on a side, but I haven't figured out how to fire all 3 at once. When shooting blocks in the general landscape, the cannonballs sometimes hit and there is an explosion, but the blocks seem to remain where they were. Now at other times, the blocks are broken and the broken blocks just sit there to be picked up or despawned. Now I haven't figured out the exact reason why the results can vary. Of course, when it comes to living targets, the results are a lot less variable, but deadly. Accuracy will also vary. Even without moving your view, you can fire the same cannon again and again and again, and you can watch the individual cannonballs and see if they tend to veer a little bit in a random direction. Which is fine, as we're not talking about a sniper rifle, but rather a big boom that has an area effect. Now, in my tests, I was able to send cannonballs over 20 blocks away and still blow stuff up. Cannons shoot with a pretty flat trajectory, but it's not completely flat. I had set up 2 ships to fire at, one at about 10 blocks away and the other at about 20 blocks away. I started firing broadsides at the first ship, which was closer, and I watched the cannonballs barely skim over it and strike and sink the second and much further ship. Damaged ships can be repaired with iron nuggets in your hand and a bunch of planks in your inventory. Right-click on the damaged ship with the iron nugget and a little damage is repaired. If the ship is fully repaired, the next right-click will have you board the ship. If a ship takes enough damage, she goes down to Davy Jones's locker, which is to say that she sinks. Anything in the cargo hold goes down with her and can be salvaged by right-clicking on the sunken hulk and moving cargo from her hold and into your inventory. Now, as far as I can tell, the sunken ship stays sunk. You can't repair her, but you can salvage the ship and everything on it by hitting it with an axe. A salvaged ship can be redeployed and it will be in an undamaged state. Some final details to keep in mind. Water temperature plays a surprising role in each ship's performance, and the galley is considered a warm water ship. Therefore, all the others are considered cold water ships. When a warm water ship is in a cold water biome, they lose 10% of their base speed. When the same warm water ship is in warm water, it gains a 10% bonus to its base speed. Since all the other ships are considered cold water ships, they have similar bonuses and penalties, except their bonus applies to cold water and the penalties applied in warm water. Speaking of cold water, icy biomes will freeze the water into ice, and the Drakkar has the ability to break the ice. Now, to be clear, so to speak, it can only break plain old regular ice. It can't break packed ice, it can't break blue ice. However, all you need to do to break the ice is to sail into it. Broken ice blocks become water source blocks, and this is interesting because the ship can break ice blocks at sea level and 1 block above. Now, if there's enough blocks just above sea level, and you break most or all of them, you will create a new level of water above the naturally generated one, and your ship will rise to float on this new level. And if there's yet another level of ice beyond that, you can use the Drakkar to break that and rise yet again. And through this method, you can actually move your Drakkar up and over land. And with enough ice and enough room, you could, theoretically, sail your ship up and over an ice mountain. Normally, you need to board the ship just to be able to move it. However, ships can be towed with a lead. Just right-click a ship with your lead in your hand, and you can pull the ship along as if it were a mob. It's incredibly awkward and frustrating, but it can be done. You can also name your ship with a name tag. Just add the name to the name tag on an anvil like usual, and then with the name tag in hand, right-click on the ship. Ship's now named. Just a word of caution though, if you sink or scuttle the ship and then recover the ship, as I described a few minutes ago, the recovered ship will essentially be a new ship. So yeah, it will have a fully repaired hull, but it also loses the name you just gave it with the name tag. If you want to add a little more customized flair to your ride, you can hold the banner in your right hand and right-click on the hull of the ship, and it will add your banner as a flag from the mast. The banner will fly from the mast horizontally, so this kind of spoils some patterns for use as flags, but most banners will still look pretty sharp flying as a flag from your ship. Though, pirate ships might not be quite as intimidating. Finally, let me close with another customization feature. Now, in the early days of automobiles, they were pretty much all painted black. And then some manufacturers started to offer other colors. Now, when somebody asked Henry Ford if he would start offering his cars in various colors, he responded to the effect that his customers can order their Model Ts in any color they wanted as long as it was black. And luckily for us, the authors of this mod gave us the option to customize our ships with any of the 16 standard die colors. Just hold the die in your hand and right-click on the ship. The die will color the sails and the rigging. I have no idea why it colors the rigging in addition to the sails, but there you go. And it's still a pretty neat feature. Now, you can color the sails of your little armada black and sail to Gondor with an undead army at your command. Or not. At least you have the choice now. And that is the Small Ships mod. So if you enjoyed this mod, please reach out to the mod owner and let them know. It's always good for mod authors to hear that all their efforts are appreciated and enjoyed, and perhaps most importantly, actually used. It keeps them going, and of course that means more great mods to choose from in the future. So, until next time, I hope this finds you and yours in good health, good spirits, and a touch of good fortune. Cheers.